if this pandemic has taught us anything, it's that we're not invincible. Before this all started, our world, our society was running at full speed. Our country's collective feet would hit the floor every morning, and off we would go to work, to run, to keep the economy buzzing, to grow and build and expand. And I wonder if from 1,000 feet up we looked like a colony of ants scurrying about, always busy, always in a hurry. Then came COVID-19. It all shut down in March. Our mighty machine that we had built and put so much faith in came to a screeching halt. And we were forced by circumstances beyond our control to consider who we were and where our purpose lies as individuals and as a nation. How could our way of life, our system on which we relied every day, so easily crumble in a matter of weeks? It makes me think about the Tower of Babel story. Perhaps our confidence or maybe even our arrogance outgrew us. This pandemic has forced humility on us. We are not invincible. And regardless of what we do or fail to do, the Earth will still spin through space at 1,000 miles an hour and orbit the Sun at 67,000 miles an hour, while our solar system blazes around the center of our galaxy at 490,000 miles per hour. Maybe we're not as significant as we think we are. Or maybe we are significant, but not because of the things we build or do. And maybe this is good news. So I read the book of Ecclesiastes last week. You know, the one where people quote, "All is vanity," and they joke about how depressing it is. And I hadn't read Ecclesiastes in a good while because if you're like me, you kind of shy away from the book since it seems pretty bleak and despairing. But because the world is in such disarray right now, I've felt drawn to read this book. And I have to say, I found it incredibly comforting. It all has to do with the idea of circles. Solomon, you may remember, King Solomon prayed for wisdom and God granted it to him. And he goes on this spiritual quest to find the meaning of life. And he writes the book of Ecclesiastes based on what he discovered. Listen to how he begins his book. "Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and it hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow. All things are wearisome, more than one can express. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, or the ear filled with hearing. What has been is what will be, and what has been done is what will be done. There is nothing new under the sun." Do you see the monotonous, redundant pattern of the things that he's observing? Generations come and go. The sun rises at one end of the sky and sets in the other, only to circle back and do it all again the next day. The wind blows from the north to the south, he says, and then goes back to the north to do it all over again. Rivers and streams run down to the sea, only for rain to fall on the mountaintops and for them to return again. He says, whatever has been will be. There is nothing new under the sun, only a repeating of all things. Solomon calls these patterns wearisome, and I can understand that. But in our world today, during such crazy and chaotic times, I think this is the reminder we need. In our Western culture, everything is linear. We live and think from point A to point B. We think of time as running out. We think of happiness as a part or a dot on the line that we haven't yet reached. And so we say to ourselves, well, if I could just land that job or drive that car or live in that neighborhood or reach retirement, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be content. And since time is finite and running out, we feel this pressure to constantly do things and build things and accomplish things in order to leave our mark on the world before this short life is over. Maybe we can learn from our friends in Eastern cultures who see life not as a straight line that gets a little shorter every day, but rather as a circle, a continual, unbroken process. There are so many examples of this in the natural world. Solomon mentions in Ecclesiastes how the rivers and streams run to the sea, and yet they never dry up and the sea is never full. That's a circle. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west and comes back around to do it again. That's a circle. The seasons of each year, the Earth's rotation and orbit around the sun, circles. Earlier in the year, I planted arugula seeds, and they germinated and sprouted and became these tiny seedlings that eventually became these healthy and robust plants, and they gave us food for the spring and early summer. And now those arugula plants have blossomed and dried up and gone back to seed. And I've been able to collect those seeds that I can again plant in the fall for new plants and new food. Seeds, seedlings, healthy plants, blossoms, seeds. A perfect circle. Our hearts right now are beating and pushing blood through our incredibly complex circulatory systems and back to our hearts. Our brains are processing and relaying information to and from all parts of our body faster than the world's best supercomputer. Ecosystems, constellations, history. Life is cyclical by nature. The gospel itself is a circle. Jesus' birth and life and suffering and death and resurrection. God creates the world and humanity. Humanity is broken by sin. God redeems humanity through Christ. And one day things will come full circle and God will make all things new again. Our existence, our place in the universe can be drawn by circles. So how is this of any comfort? What solace can we find in thinking of life this way? There's a song I really love called Follow the Sun by Xavier Rudd. I'll put the link to it in the video description if you want to give it a listen. But the bridge says, when you feel life coming down on you like a heavy weight, when you feel this crazy society adding to the strain, take a stroll to the nearest waters and remember your place. Many moons have risen and fallen long before you came. I love that. There's something therapeutic about zooming out and remembering that I am not the center of the universe. Long before we were on this earth, many came before us, and long after we're gone, others will follow. And all the while, the earth will keep spinning, and the sun will keep rising and setting. To me, There's great comfort in this thought. This is not a reason to despair or cry out, well, what's the meaning and the purpose of life? If this is true, all is vanity. What if the rivers ceased to run and said, well, what's the use? We'll just end up back where we started anyway. Or what if a seed refused to sprout because it knew its end was inevitably to pass on its life to other seeds? What if the sun chose not to rise tomorrow and said, well, it's no use in doing so. I'm really not getting anywhere or accomplishing anything. No, the rivers continue to tumble joyfully down the mountains like a child playing on a grassy hill. The seeds, those humble little seeds, sprout and grow with all of their strength to produce an abundance of food. The sun selflessly comes up every single day and displays its beauty at both ends of the sky. Could it be that true joy, true contentment is found in realizing and living into the circles that make up our lives? What if instead of trying to cram as many things as we could into this life that we have, we realized our interconnectedness with all things and allowed ourselves to become part of the natural flow of the universe? This is not an excuse to sit back and do nothing. Work and creativity are part of life's circles. But I believe that there's a drastic difference between laboring away for some distant goal that only when we attain it will we be fulfilled, versus finding value and meaning in life's daily work. I think about what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6. He tells the hearers, look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap nor store in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them and takes care of them. Are you not of more value than they? Think about that. Without any sort of human interaction or reliance, the earth itself, entire species and ecosystems sustain themselves because God lovingly and intentionally created them to do so. In His childlike wonderment, He sustains all things by His good pleasure. Why would that not also be true for us? In the 3rd chapter of Ecclesiastes, Solomon wrestles with this idea that we must leave behind our life's work to those who are to come after us. Like a plant grows and then passes on its life to the seeds that it leaves behind, all of our material possessions and our money and our careers must be left behind too. And the opposite is also true. We can also leave behind damage that we've done or problems we've created. In 2014, the Ökjagul Glacier in Iceland was deemed dead because it could no longer sustain itself due to climate change. And a ceremony was held and a plaque was installed at the site where the glacier was, with a really haunting message written by poet and environmentalist Andre Magnusson. It said, "A letter to the future. This monument is to acknowledge that we know what is happening and we know what needs to be done. But only you know if we did it." Friends, if there is more to life than accumulating wealth and money or fame or making a name for ourselves only to be forgotten several generations later, how then are we investing in the things that truly matter? How are we working and teaching and living in ways that help us to realize our interconnectedness with one another and with all living things? We are not invincible. We are not the center of the universe. Far from it. But we are significant because God has created us in His image with incredible minds to think and solve problems, with incredible bodies to move and work and create, with incredible hearts to feel. And we must use these gifts to create a better world for our brothers and sisters with whom we share this planet now, and for the children who will come after us. There are circles everywhere, perpetually turning and growing and expanding and returning again, all sustained by God's loving hand. May we find true joy and contentment in the cyclical nature of this life and this beautiful world. And one day, far from now, when many moons have risen and fallen long since we were here, may the generations of that time be better off because of our presence here now. For God's glory and for the good of all. Amen.